just a broad picture on what you're expecting from our market today.
Welcome back, Brooke. I guess looking at the market, it is a strong US dollar story. That's really what impacted on markets on Friday. We saw the US job numbers out. They were better than expected, coming in at 195,000 new jobs being created in the month of June in the US, with the unemployment rate at 7.6%. So really what this meant was a strengthening in terms of the US stock market. That was up by 1%, but also a strengthening in the US dollar, and that's going to have the biggest impact on the Australian share market today. If we have a look at commodities, we know that commodities are hit hard by that strong Australian dollar, by the strong US dollar, because commodities are traded in US dollars. So we did see a huge tumble in commodity prices. We saw gold prices down by 3.1%, and copper in New York actually fell by 3.5%. So we are expecting to see the material sector being the biggest weight on the Aussie share market today. Also watching the Australian dollar, we're looking at softness there, and we know that in the past has meant foreign outflows, which has meant broad-based selling for the Aussie share market. So while we did see a positive lead from the US, some good US jobs numbers coming out on Friday, I think the biggest impact on the Aussie share market will be that strong US dollar, and that means lower commodities.
Let's get stock specific, because you talk about the commodity story, Atlas in that space, so it's kind of caught as a knot between the broader selling and a good news story. It seems that the former's winning out over the latter currently.
It looks like its Mount Webber asset is going to be developed. So this is direct shipping ore, an iron ore asset. It is 70% owned by Atlas Iron. Now they're expecting to see production at about 3 million tonnes per annum over a life expectancy of 18 years, and first shipments expected in the second quarter of 2014. But really, in the whole scheme of things, this is quite small fry for Atlas Iron. In fact, the biggest and the key thing for Atlas Iron at the moment is probably an infrastructure solution. And if it does manage an infrastructure deal, what we're watching is the cost and the capex spend, which of course the market's very wary of from iron ore miners at the moment and commodity-based companies. But if it was able to secure a rail deal, that would really underpin the Horizon 2 expansion, and that would mean adding 20 to 30 million tonnes per annum, which is much bigger than this Mount Webber project, which is just 3 million tonnes per annum. But if we have a look at this space, so we know that Vale, BHP, Rio Tinto, Fortescue, they're probably looking to add on supply about probably more than 400 million tonnes up to 2017. So it is a time when a lot of supply is coming online. Although this is good news, I guess, in a small way for Atlas Iron, it is better news for Altura. Now, Altura owns 30% of this project, but of course the Mount Webber project is a much bigger slice of Altura's assets. And if we just have a look at how Altura's stock has opened up this morning, this is the 30-day chart for Altura, and you can see the stock has just soared up from about 10 cents to 12 cents this morning, so up around about 20%. So that news coming through from Atlas, great news for Altura, which owns about 30% of that Mount Webber project, and we are seeing a good performance by Altura this morning.
Julia, just in the broader scheme of things, we've talked about the materials sector and why that will weigh today, and we can see the early moves. That's the direction we're going. What about the banks? Will there be any offset today, or where are the banks going to take their direction from?
Well, generally, it depends on the volume. Usually a Monday is a slow volume day, but if we do see international selling coming in, then we will see selling of the big four banks, because a very popular strategy over the last few years has been that carry trade, where you borrow in zero interest rate type of currencies like the US dollar or the Japanese yen, and you invest it in Australia. And some of those investors, of course, aim for those high yield investments, which are mostly those banking yields. So we could see the banks still coming under a little bit of pressure, even though the leads have been quite good for the banking space. But I think it's mostly going to be the commodities space which is impacted here today, but we're not expecting to see huge volumes coming through because it is a Monday, so expecting to see about $4 billion being traded through the Australian market today.
Julia, let's talk about a company that's into the apartment building space in the West, both in terms of where the mining boom's been, but also in more urban areas. Record profits news through today. What are you making of this?
It's nice to see a profit upgrade coming through, and this is from Finbar. It is WA's leading apartment development company, and it is forecasting $31 million profit for the year. This would be a record profit for Finbar, and it would also represent the 7th consecutive year where we've seen growth in profit. Final dividend will also increase by 9%, so all up it does look like it's good news for shareholders. Of course, though, the market's always forward-looking, so we're more interested in the future, and I guess having a look at Finbar, it is planning to to launch the sales of 3 new metropolitan projects by the end of 2013. So that's going to be key. So it looks like strong growth in that area. Of course, we're also watching the Pilbara because we know that mining has been slowing down, and it's also been impacting on residential developments around those mining areas. And if we have a look at the Pilbara development of Finbar, I guess the good news is that they did have strong pre-sales of these units, which basically means they can retire the debt facility which was related to that project. But we're watching that space very carefully because there is exposure to that mining space. But all up, some good news for Finbar, coming out to upgrade its earnings forecast for the year, and it looks like it's been doing pretty well in WA.
Julia.